What's up, everyone? They let us get to Friday again, so that means it's time for another episode of the Leaf Podcast. LeafCast? I don't know. Maybe that's what I'll call it in the future. But basically, this is a little different from the two other videos that I do every week. This one is a little more conversational. It's more, informal, I guess is the word for it. Basically what I do is I just pick a topic at random and then I yap about it for a few minutes and I see how it goes. Last week was the Glimmer Man, and that one was pretty fun to do. So this week, I decided to look into the Dogman stuff. Now I know a lot of people have done Dogman to death and all that, and there's even total channels just dedicated to Dogman, so it's not going to be on that level. This is more stuff that just kind of jumps out to me or pops up in my newsfeed that I find interesting, that I think it'd be cool to share. So for this one, it's going to be about Dogman. One of these in this video is crazy, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. And as usual, links in the description for PayPal, Patreon, for the articles that I use and all that stuff. So try to follow the 3 H's of the channel. And this first one is from the state of Maine, where 2 college students saw a Dogman and it left them stunned. It took place near the Sandy River, and it was 2 young women who were attending the University of Maine. They seemed to be out for a walk. They left their dorms at around 11 p.m. and made their way through the field toward the trail to the river. They said it was a very clear night as well. And while walking, one of the girls got the sense that they weren't alone, like they were being watched, the second that they hit the trail. But she didn't see anything at first, so usually in that situation you just figure it's nerves. You figure that, oh well, it's dark out and, just kind of creepy vibes, and you keep going. They reached the river, and they found a grassy spot to settle into. But even then, the girl still felt like that her and her friend were being watched. The 2 girls said that they were only there for about 10 minutes before the nerves turned to something worse. They heard a rustling sound about 50 feet to their left, and then it was like all the sound in the area just left, and a stillness took over that sent shivers up their spines. And then they saw an entity that had a canine-like structure and glowing yellow eyes shot out from the bushes. Now, very luckily for them, the thing went in the opposite direction and didn't seem to be after them. But, as you can imagine, they were terrified, so they decided to get the hell out of there. And in addition to this not being a dog or a wolf, they said that it ran on 2 legs. In fact, they both called it a werewolf, because that's probably the only term that a lot of people, a lot of everyday people, would think of. Now once they did get out of there and they got back to the light of the dorms, they got talking and they got thinking that there's no way that this was a real werewolf. But it was big, it had those intense eyes, and it was running on 2 legs. What else could it have been? After learning of the creatures such as the Beast of Bray Road, and the 2 of them reading various Dogman encounters, they realized that they didn't imagine what they saw. After all of this, they're certain that what they saw was in fact a werewolf. Now I know that some people may get a little annoyed at hearing werewolf or Dogman interchangeably, but generally for me, I think that you have to understand that for a lot of people, for like almost everyone, besides people who read about this stuff or talk about it, still talk about a ghost sighting as if it's something that's out of this world crazy, when a lot of other people are kind of deep into this. To them, that's boring now. But to the person that experienced it, that's the scariest thing that ever happened in their life. And I only mention something like that because I've mixed the 2 up before, calling them a werewolf or a Dogman interchangeably, and people got a little salty about it. Not on this channel, of course, but like on the internet in the past. But anyway, what's your thoughts on using werewolf and Dogman interchangeably? Are they the same thing? Are they not the same thing? Is one supernatural and is one engineered? I've heard that argument before, that they believe that dogmen are in fact engineered or made that way, and werewolves are more supernatural and more mythical. So, let me know what you think there. But, to continue, this next one is from a rural farming community in the U.S. state of West Virginia. It happened back in 1977, and the witness was a boy at the time. He claimed his grandfather would talk a lot about strange animals that would be on the property, and his grandfather would, as you can imagine, with all these things roaming around the property, he would keep a gun on him at all times. My cat has joined the podcast. How are you? I don't know if her purring caught on the microphone or not, but he would constantly keep a gun on him, pretty much at all times. He also told the boy to always lock his window at night and to be careful when walking around outside, especially in the evening. One evening in particular, the boy heard something outside of his window, as his grandfather had fell asleep in the living room with his gun on his lap. The boy said that he could hear this low growling from out past the window, but he couldn't see anything. When he saw nothing out the window, he must have thought it was his imagination. He then left to get some candy from a bowl that was in the living room, and this is when he saw something else. A claw coming in through the window with its palm facing down, as if it was trying to push the window up. The witness said he clearly saw 3 fingers. In fact, the middle finger was the longest. As most people would do in that situation as a kid, he screamed. His grandfather went into fight mode and proceeded to hit the creature's fingers with his gun. The boy grabbed a knife from nearby and stabbed at the fingers. And at this moment, the grandmother, hearing everything that was going on, rushed into the room and turned on the outside lights. This lit up the yard. The guy says that he could see the thing in the light. He even made eye contact with it. The creature then took off running, just as the grandfather raised his gun to shoot it. According to the witness, the creature appeared to be angry and was growling as it ran. Apparently at other points, this thing came back, but he never had the same encounter with it as that specific night. Then his grandparents told him that in 1974, the grandfather was in a deer stand. He was bow hunting when this strange creature attempted to climb the tree and enter the stand through a door latch. It didn't seem to matter how much the grandfather shot at it and stabbed at it, it wouldn't stop coming. Eventually, it attempted to poke its nose through the opening in the stand, and that's when the grandfather stabbed it in the nose. It managed to get a paw through and slash the leg of the grandfather. The creature fled after that. The scar was visible on the nose of the creature that was standing in the window that night that it tried to get in. The grandfather said that he waited in the tree stand 3 hours before he felt safe enough to climb down and leave. At the time, they had never heard of a dogman, and they just referred to it as the strange animal or the werewolf. One thing that always gets me when I read stories like this is how calm the elderly people are. They're just like, oh, there's the local dogman, or there's the local, and then you just insert weird cryptid here. And then sometimes they'll give it a name, like, oh, there's Small Town Jimmy. And then the next thing you know, it's on a t-shirt. And then when someone sees it, it's like the most terrifying thing that they've ever seen. But this one is the really crazy one. So a bunch of teens were messing around an old abandoned hospital. This was the Hayeswood Hospital, and it's in Maysville, Kentucky. So as I said, they were just messing around inside when they split up to go just exploring around the dusty ruins of the building. At some point, the particular witness of this story became aware of a terrible smell. He said it was like something was rotting. This was as he was exploring the basement of the building, by the way, which to just add to the creepy vibe of the whole place, this place where he was in was the morgue. The floor was flooded with about 3 inches of water, and he sloshed through the water and then heard something. A metal door slammed, and then something was running through the water some distance away. Now at this moment, he didn't think a whole lot of this. He thought that it was his friends just playing a joke on him, so he wasn't scared. He decided he might do something back. He decided to climb on top of one of the coolers that had been used for storing the dead bodies. He was hoping to get the jump on his friends, so that when they came around the corner or something, he could reach out and touch them or jump down and scare them. But then, he heard someone screaming. He thought that it was his friends, once again, just messing with him. So he didn't do anything. He stayed where he was. But then the smell came back. The smell of rotten meat this time. And the stronger the smell got, the more he heard those footsteps that were sloshing through the water. And then it was accompanied by a sniffing or a labored breathing. He was overcome by a sense of pure dread. He jumped down from the cooler as quick as he could to start running toward the exit to the morgue. Hearing that panting and the water splashing right behind him the whole time, as well as this ominous growl, he knew that he probably wouldn't be able to get out in time, so he slipped into the boiler room and stood as still as possible. When he was waiting there, something very large just slammed into the door to the boiler room. There was the sound like there was a scratching of claws against the steel. After hearing this, he decided to run toward the other end of the boiler room. This was an attempt to reach the access to the generator, and, in turn, reach the dock doors that the trucks used to unload. And with that, he could get outside and into the woods. So he got to the other end of the boiler room. He opened the door to the dock room, and when he looked back, he saw something straight out of a horror movie. This thing's arm had somehow got through the door, and it was sticking out, clawing around at the air. He said it was covered in gray and brown masses of fur. It looked pretty much human, but not quite. The hand itself was all wrong. It had 5 digits, but the claws would have made a bear run in fear, he said. He slammed the door behind him and ran for the other dock door, but the dock door wouldn't budge, and he could hear all the gurneys overturning and the lockers sliding on the floor. It was getting through, and the only thing between him and it was now a single door. He ran to one of the windows by the dock door and busted it out, which really cut up his hand from the glass. He began to pull himself through the window, and then he heard that one door get slammed into. One of the hinges flew off the door and hit the wall. He tumbled out of the window and hit the ground. When he stood up, he could see it in the doorway. The witness says he is 6'4" and 250 pounds. He's not little, but this thing took up the entire 8-foot by 3-foot wide door. It was covered head to toe in brown-gray fur. It had a narrow snout, almost like a Doberman pinscher, and its ears were just barely visible because of the doorway, but he could tell they were pointing upwards, just like a dog. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was paralyzed with fear. Then this thing was staring right at him, right into his soul, he said. Then it snarled, and this shook him from whatever shock he was in. He turned and ran. He ran up the hill to the woods to get around to the hospital, to get back to the street where the car was parked. He says he didn't make it 25 feet when he heard clawing to get out the window. He was thinking he would never make it to the car this way. So he turned and ran back toward the hospital, where there was a fire escape ladder. He had used the ladder before to climb to the roof and take pictures of the entire town. He said that he completely skipped the first 3 rungs of the ladder, and he was now inside the enclosed part of the fire escape. The thing was howling, and as it howled, he could feel waves of terror that filled his body. His hand was hurting a lot, killing him at that point, he said. And he was getting blood on everything. He says just as he was reaching the first floor window that he could climb into, the thing slammed into the fire escape ladder, knocking him down a couple rungs. He said it leapt onto the outside of the fire escape and started clawing at his feet. And just as he reached the window, he felt it. Pain like he had never felt before. It grabbed just above his ankle and yanked, and in doing so, shredded his boot to the end of his jeans and into his flesh. He was able to pull himself into that first floor window, and then he heard it push itself off the fire escape and head back the way it came. So now he was dragging his left leg and his mangled hand, trying to get back to the entrance. The entrance that they came in from was only about 150 feet away down this main hall and around a left turn. As he's halfway down the hall, he can hear steel doors slamming again. He's dragging himself down the hall, just trying to stay focused on getting out of the hospital. Then the howling starts again, and he can hear it getting closer. He makes the turn, and he hears the pounding coming up the stairs from the basement. He makes it to the entrance, and he can hear the padding of hands and feet on the floor. He says that he made the mistake of turning around to look at it, and it was running on all fours like a real dog. He got out of the hospital, he bolted down the hill toward the street where the car was parked, and realized his friends had left him there. His only way of escape seemed to be gone. So he went further down the hill, going as fast as he could. He said he started banging on the door of the first house that he went to. Luckily for him, it was an elderly lady who let him in, and seeing the state that he was in, called the police. When the authorities got there, he told them this tale, but of course, they didn't believe him, despite the fact that he had injuries to corroborate his story. They basically thought he was on drugs. The EMTs took him to the hospital. They did blood work, and they found that there were no drugs in his system, but they did conclude that he was just attacked by a random wild dog, and that everything else was either made up, or he just saw it for more than it was. He ended up with 36 stitches on his leg, 17 in his hand. He had to get rabies shots, and he told the local wildlife officer his story. The local wildlife officer said that they had reports of wild dog packs running around the outside of town, but they mainly were ransacking garbage cans and killing pets. He, of course, told the man that it was not just a pack of dogs. There was a giant dog man, but he still just thought he was crazy. Now, it kind of ends there. It just ends saying that he had a cut on his leg for a long time. But for me, I would be so mad at my friends if they left me somewhere like that. In fact, I'd be even more pissed about my friends leaving than the cryptid that I just escaped from. Like, if I even ever talked to them again, it would be a long time. I'd be like, you know what you did, and just leave it at that, because who does that to their friends? So this guy, of course, probably needs some new friends. But it was really crazy, wasn't it? When I read that, I was like, this is insane. So I just had to put it in a video. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video or this podcast. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe and comment and like and favorite, whatever else you can do on YouTube. And of course, there's links in the description if you want to donate to the channel and all that great stuff. And with that, I will see you Sunday. Thank you for pulling up a stump with me, and thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.